Hey Masters, if you know me and you've been listening to my podcast, you know health and nutrition is number one. Check out AdvoCare products. I am a distributor. Go to livelongersmarter.com. We got everything you could imagine for your health and nutrition goals. If you're interested, at the end of the podcast, at the very end, there'll be more information on the products. Also, LandVoice is one of our sponsors. They have amazing services. If you need leads, please check out LandVoice for FSBO, expired, circle prospecting, a dialer, whatever you need. Go to davidihill.com, affiliates. You can click the LandVoice link and all of the special opportunities will be there.
Get ready for one more sale, inspiring you with ideas through powerful and engaging interviews with top performers of their field. Now, join us as we discuss techniques and strategies of the coolest and most successful people on the planet.
When I went into it full-time in 2009, everybody's saying the sky is falling. My husband's talking to people and they're saying, what does your wife do? And he says, she sells real estate. And I go, oh. And there's a silence, like, is she okay? Or are you guys... how is that going? And he'd be like, no, you don't understand. She's doing great. And so when people were asking me, how's the market? I'd say, it's amazing. Real estate's not for the faint-hearted. There's going to be moments where you're questioning what is it all for. And then you're going to have really clear moments that remind you exactly why you're doing it.
What up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery, guys, where every week we bring you the best of the best in the sales realm. And guys, this week we're bringing you back to the real estate world with Valerie Almanzar, who is out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she's just killing it, my friends. Listen to this. First off, she was closing almost 200 sides herself, and then went and partnered with an expansion team with Ben Kinney and his group. And I mean, they're just talking about doing massive things. And the cool thing about Val is, she talks to us kind of like her progression through real estate. Starting off as a part-time agent and doing something else and how she was able to make that jump. Because I see one of the biggest challenges, especially with people that I know have a lot of potential, but they just are scared, they're terrified to give up their full-time job or their security. And if they just made the jump, man, their potential is so much greater. And Val just tells us how she was able to achieve that. So I love that about this. And it's just a great article. She's a big thinker and she's just doing great things out there. So, hey, check this out. And also go back and check out last week. We had Grant Cardone. The week before that, we were with Mel Robbins. I would really go back if you haven't listened to those interviews and listen to them because they're just amazing. And then share them with someone else. Hey, listen too, and if you're not subscribed, please go to iTunes, or if you're on an Android, Stitcher Radio, and subscribe to the podcast so you get our updates every week. It's that simple. As a matter of fact, all you need to do is go to my website, davidihill.com, and you can subscribe there. The other thing I want to tell you about is some of my affiliates, guys. I have some great affiliates on a website. I mean, we have leads. If you're looking for leads, we have Vulcan 7. We have LandVoice. There's great opportunities. If you go to my site, it's davidihill.com/affiliates. There's a bunch of affiliates. Obviously, AdvoCare products. If you're into health and nutrition like I am, man, there's just so much there. So take advantage of that. And then just like I said, please subscribe. And finally, last but not least, is Master Camp starts August 7th, guys. Oh, man, we're just going to go through the whole playbook. So listen, and here's the thing. There's a lot of agents out there that want to take more listings. They want to close, but they don't want to seem pushy, right? So, if that's you, where you want to close more listings, you want to build that listing inventory, but you don't want to seem pushy, you got to take the Master Camp, because I'm going to bring you through the process. So here's the thing, and I don't like to brag on myself. Man, I take so many listings over other agents because the experience is different with the client. They're just like, man, you just don't seem like a salesperson. You ask great questions. You followed up. And those are all the things that I'm teaching in this camp. So listen, if you're interested in taking your business to the next level, no matter what level it is, you need to get into this camp. So we still have a few spots left. We'd love to have you. Go to davidihill.com/master camp. Get yourself registered. All right, anyway, man, that's a lot of stuff. Valerie Almanzar is crushing it for us. Enjoy. You rock. Hey, Masters. Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery, guys. And today, listen, we are with Valerie Almanzar. Did I say your name right, Valerie?
Yes, you got it almost 100%.
Almost 100%. Okay, got it. So tell us your last name.
The right way, so to speak, is Almanzar. Nobody can say it that way, so
Oh,
Almanzar
goodness,
works.
yeah. Okay, yeah, I could not have gotten that anyway. So thank you for your time. You're absolutely brilliant. And, you are just a rock star agent. I've known you for, I don't know, got to be like 4 or 5 years now. We were role play partners for a while. We've had the opportunity to talk about business and help each other get better at FSBOs and expireds. You've been in the business for 11 years. You've always had a strong team. And here's the cool thing. And also you were 30 under 30, right? 2010, 2011. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And man, you did 179 units last year and then went and partnered with an expansion team. So wow, that's mind blowing. So anyway, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you. I'm excited to answer some questions and see what I can do to leave some people with some great new information.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that. And clearly you're a resource for us. First, I just want to talk a little bit about yourself. I mean, you've been in the business 11 years. Kind of how did you get started in real estate? Bring us back to 11 years ago. What did that look like?
Okay, sure. 11 years ago, I was graduating with my MBA in marketing and operations management, and I was interviewing with different companies in sales. And I just really couldn't figure out what it was I wanted to do. Had a great conversation with one of my professors at the university. And out of the blue, he looked at me and pretty much it was like the light bulb just went off. And he said, have you ever thought about selling real estate? And I'm looking at him going, I'm getting my MBA. Why would I go into real estate? And he said, hear me out. And so at that point in time, new construction was really, really booming. The market was booming. And he asked me if I would be interested in at least talking to Pulte Homes. And I said, absolutely, might as well look at all my options. And that was what started my foot in the door with real estate. Was I interviewed with Pulte Homes and started working towards becoming a sales associate with them right when the market was peaking. And then it just shifted.
Similar to me, I started a business 2003. It was a different market back then. I did a lot of new construction. Then the market shifted. So what happened with you being in new home sales when the market shifted?
So in 2006, when I started, which was in May, the training process with the builder was you're an intern, you get paid hourly, and then you also would get a bonus structure with any properties that you sell. And it takes about, just like any business, takes about 90 days to get up and running. And during that 90-day period, the intention was to start transitioning me into a full sales associate in one of the communities that they were in negotiations on purchasing. And by the end of that year, the purchase had completely stopped. They started laying people off. And Pulte's a national builder. So in the other states across the country, more specifically the East Coast, they started noticing that the market was getting softer and they started pulling back on the spending that they had been doing before. So what I started experiencing for my first real job outside of college was seeing how a company reacts to a market shift, and I didn't like it. They were letting go of people that had been with the company for 15, 20 years. The vice president of sales that hired me at my 1-year anniversary was one of the people that also got let go. And so at that point in time, I started saying, I need to start looking at an exit strategy, because as long as I'm working for a company, they will control whether or not I'm going to have a job.
So was that the time you decided you wanted to go into sales, into real estate, and kind of be like the independent real estate agent, per se?
Well,
that's the dream, right?
It was really scary. So that was the transition into the end of 2007. A lot of the employees were being let go. I'd almost use the phrase, they were dropping like flies. You go in and it was in waves. They laid off 15 people, 10 people, 20 people.
Yeah.
By my last conversation, that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. I was sitting with the two managers at the time at Pulte, and one of them said, we have good news. You'll still have a job, and we're going to keep you as an intern, which translated into I get paid an hourly wage and I get paid a bonus for doing the same thing as the other salespeople. And I walked out of that meeting clear that I needed to get out of the new construction side and start working in the resale side. And I also wanted to have something else that I was working on with a steady income because I didn't know how the market was going to continue to move. So in August, I actually went to go work with PR Newswire, which is a press release distribution company, and also transitioned into working for a small mom and pop company to sell residential real estate on that side.
Okay, so obviously the market shifted for new construction. We all went through that. You realized, there's really no money to be made here. There's no opportunity here is what it sounds like you're saying. So now you decide, like most of us, right, all of our listeners or some of our listeners, that, hey, I need steady income, so I'm going to go get a real job, but then I'm also going to sell real estate, right? Does that make sense what I just said to you?
Yep. Absolutely.
Or am I misconstruing that? Okay, cool. And this is a great conversation because this is something that we deal with so much, Valerie, where I talk to so many agents that are like, you know what, I really want to get into real estate, but I need to make sure I've got the money coming in. So they try to do it part-time and it just doesn't work part-time. So what did that look like for you? And then I'd like to know how you made that transition.
Okay. Start working in two completely different industries essentially at the same time, doing the press release distribution sales, which was a lot of cold calling. So I was cold calling CEOs, CFOs, which in my personal opinion is a lot more stressful than calling a for sale by owner or an expired, because to me, these CEOs and CFOs are already super busy and here I am trying to sell them something that they may not even care about. So I started transitioning into that, and then I also was transitioning into resale. I will never forget this. I had a conversation with my husband. He was so distraught with the idea of me doing real estate because he was saying, you're never going to have a life. You're not going to be able to do anything. All you're going to be doing is working all the time. And for that first year and a half, that's exactly what happened, because doing real estate part-time is a word. When you're saying you're doing that with real estate, to do it at a really high level, there is no part-time.
Absolutely.
I actually started seeing my real estate business bleed into the press release distribution business for two reasons. I loved what I was doing with real estate, and people needed to get a hold of me. I felt like I had to be available to them. And so I found myself answering calls for real estate, being on the phone with negotiations in the middle of my workday at the other job, which was also very stressful because I believe in whenever you do something, you do it at a high level. And both sides were pulling at each other. So that was for 2007 into 2008. And at the end of 2008, I was making contacts. People knew I was selling real estate. I was marketing on Facebook, getting people to know that I was selling real estate, really focusing on the real estate side because I was pushing myself to do the other job. And it was, even though it was a steady income and great benefits, so to speak, we started experiencing the same issue I did at the new construction job, which was people were getting laid off. The market is continuing to shift, and I'm feeling that sense of not having any power. I actually was talking to the owner of the real estate company, the mom and pop that I was at, and the owner said, we've made a decision that we need to look at purchasing in the RE/MAX franchise because the market is getting really tough, especially for mom and pops. I think it'll be better for us to have a bigger brand name, and we're going to follow the model, which means that you need to do this full time. And it wasn't like we're going to leave you alone. It was like, Valerie, you can do this. We want to see you do this. And we think it's time that you jump into this full time. And so in 2009, it was about February, I gave my notice, and it was a sink or swim attitude. I was either going to do really, really well at real estate, which equaled making the income I made the year before, selling real estate and having the full-time job, or I was going to get out of real estate and find something else that I could do really well at a high level with my sales background.
I guess the two questions here, right, Valerie? So first off, I mean, it sounds like you went, about a year and a half before you made the jump full-time? Is that accurate?
Yeah, about a year and a few months. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you could go back, would you have, obviously, hindsight's 20/20, right? But if you could go back in time, would you have done it differently? Based on what honestly, you know now?
At that point in time, I was so green. I didn't know the difference between, what was at a really high level, what was a big business. And I kept asking my qualifying broker, what's the difference? How come this agent sold 30 million and everybody else only did 2 million or 1.5 million? And my qualifying broker wasn't selling like that and didn't have a business like that. So my qualifying broker was struggling to answer those questions. And I didn't know about Keller Williams. I had interviewed with Keller Williams Realty early on when I was leaving new construction. And what they told me was, and again, it was a different market, different time. They said, we don't accept part-time agents, because I wasn't comfortable just leaving, the steady income. And so it was pretty much out the window. And looking back on it, I've told people who were on the fence about, do we switch to Keller Williams or anything like that? The only regret I've ever truly had, and it's not a pitch for Keller Williams, I mean this wholeheartedly, was that I didn't find Keller Williams or participate in Keller Williams sooner. Because all of everything we've done, or everything I've done, was just following the systems and the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And I just really didn't believe it, I guess, or I didn't realize it.
Well, it's interesting because I interviewed Bob Lucido, 6 months ago on a podcast, and he said the same thing in the interview like 3 times. And I mean, I don't know, Bob's doing like close to 2,000 units a year, and that's the one thing he kept bringing up. Wow, I wish I went to Keller Williams sooner. So, I'm in the same boat as you there. I mean, but for the people listening to this that maybe are in that place where they want to make the transition, but they're on the fence, what would you say to them? How do you make that jump? I mean, man, I know a dozen people right now that would be tremendous if they would just take the jump. You know what I mean?
Well, and
seriously, no, I'm telling you, I know multiple agents that have their licenses. Some of them are in my downline, and we won't hire part-time people on our teams anymore. It doesn't work. Like I said, I got a half dozen people that if they would go full-time, we'd love to take them on and we'd help them.
Well, and one of the people I had talked to in this career that I've been blessed in participating in, one of the things that we were talking about is he said, what are you doing? And I said, I sell residential real estate. And there was a pause, and then he looked at me and he said, you are in an industry that the effort you put into it, you actually get direct results from. And that's what's really amazing about real estate. And I never forgot that. So if you treat it like a full-time job, you go into the office, you practice, you read, you do all the things as if you were in a regular job, you will reap the rewards of it. You will never reap the rewards if you only do it part-time. So what you're putting into it is what you're going to get out of it. And then it's also the 80-20 rule, doing the 20% that's going to get you 80% of the results.
So it sounds like, honestly, I mean, first off, it's you got to shift somehow. We have to shift our mindset that, I'm just going all in, right? I'm gonna go all in, and then you need to obviously partner up with the right people, and you need to be doing the right things.
Absolutely, and also utilizing the resources that you have. I always equate Keller Williams to a gym membership. You have the personal trainers, you have the machines, you have the membership. And just because somebody's with Keller Williams does not mean that they're actually utilizing it. Just like a gym membership. Just because you have a gym membership doesn't mean you're actually going to the gym.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so I'm going to jump forward now. You did 179 transactions last year. I'm going to go back. I think when we started role playing, it was like 2012, maybe 2013. You were at that place. You were looking to break 100 transactions, right? You were about that area there. Is that correct? Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So what was it like? How did you build your business? How did you build your team? Was it from Fizzball's Expireds, Sphere of Influence? How does somebody go from just saying, okay, I'm going to make the leap, to all of a sudden I'm closing 100 transactions, 3 years later, and then almost 200 transactions 5 years later, 6 years later?
It's a lot of work, a lot of tears, a lot of growing pains. It's funny, we look at our space from when I first started. It was a small 8x8 office, and I hired my first assistant, and it's the two of us in this little office. And then we're realizing that she has weaknesses like transaction management. And so we bring in a transaction coordinator, and then we have to get her a cubicle. And it's taking those calculated risks and also leading with revenue. Wendy Papazan is one of my friends. And when we were around the same time, we were looking at hiring our first assistant. And I'm asking her, how do you do this? What does that look like? And she's saying, well, this is what I've done. I've got 90 days worth of income for this assistant saved. because I know that if they're not bringing in their worth in that first 90 days, I'm only going to be out the 90 days worth of income as we go through the process. I would say a lot of it was looking at how do you grow your business from prospecting. We're very, very prospecting based. Facebook was one of the other big ones. I was posting about our transactions, and we still do, letting people know what we're doing, letting people know that we're growing, we're looking to grow, and then training people, taking classes like it's not Recruit Select anymore, we're career visioning, learning how to hire the right people, growing into how do you train them and get them up and running to where they are also really successful. My first 2 hires were buyer's agents. There was a huge gap. It was, you've got your real estate license, great, I have a ton of leads, I need you to start calling them, I need you to start showing them, and let's make some money. And what was missing was, okay, so how do you talk to these people? Script practice. What are you saying to these people? What do you say, which is script? And where are you finding these people? Well, anybody could be a potential friend or client or however you want to position it. The way we've grown is from hiring fantastic people and also figuring out as we start hitting, the wheels are turning and everything starts shaking, how do we continue to provide great customer service and increase our game too? When I started doing it here, there was a couple of things I noticed that my competition wasn't doing. One, they weren't aggressive. They weren't answering their phone quickly. They weren't returning calls quickly. I'd have situations where buyers would say, I called 3 agents and you're the first one to actually answer your phone. That was something that we started off doing that started changing the dynamic of the real estate market here. And then follow through, asking for anybody else that they knew that would be interested in buying or selling, and then bringing on great people and training them. So back to those buyer's agents. So there was a gap. They're a buyer's agent. Here's the leads. Go with it. For 3 months, they didn't make anything. They were working, I'll say, quote, part-time. And I went to Mega Camp and they were interviewing somebody on stage, and he was talking about how he was doing showing partners and the process and how things transitioned out from showing the buyer. I came back from Mega Camp and sat down with them and I said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to make some changes. We're going to change our structure on what we were doing for the compensation, and we're also going to change what you're doing. And I'm going to start training you. And what I really need you to start doing first is showing a home, which was a strength for me starting out new construction. So I was fielding those calls. I was doing the prospecting. I was setting the appointments because they weren't ready. And then I got them to do that one piece, which was show a home. Once they got really comfortable with showing a home, I also got them to start closing, which was great. You love the property. Let's go talk to Val and see if she can write up an offer. So once we started mastering those 2 pieces, I started having them do follow-up calls. And then I started having them do the prospecting piece. So it was a little bit slower. Here's what's really interesting, though. After coming back from Mega Camp and implementing that, both of them had somebody under contract within 2 weeks.
Wow. I love it. I mean, I think, honestly, going back to the old RS, and hey, I'm a KWU instructor. I taught the RS. Great course. I think the mistake a lot of us made, which you obviously didn't, was we got really, really good at hiring people, but then we really weren't using the second half, right? The lead, train, motivate part, and we'd hire people, but then we would just let them kind of flounder, and at least in my case, right? Not everybody. But I saw that being really, really common. We'd get good at hiring people, but no training, no leadership, no nothing, and they'd either not do anything or they'd quit, right? So now with the 30, 60, 90, I absolutely love the plans we have in place and the processes we have in place.
Yeah, and honestly, I wasn't doing it either because the Recruit Select class was offered 10 times versus the 30, 60, 90 class that we call it today, which was only offered 1. So it was offered 1 time for every 10 times you could take Recruit Select. And honestly, the breaking point for me was that one of my hires actually moved on to a different career, different job, whatever. And I was trying to figure out what could I have done better, which I don't think the role itself and the job itself was the right fit. However, she was also a friend of mine, and out of love for me, she said, I think that it'll help you to get more leadership information and leadership growth. And she was very eloquent in how she told me, and the pain of hiring the wrong person and losing the person, and it was somebody that I loved very much, was so great that I vowed I will never do that again. And I really needed to start focusing on that other piece.
I love that. Yeah, I think it came clear for me when I was tracking teaching. I taught RS 17 times, and then I realized I'd only taught the second half about 3 times.
Yeah.
Right? Or there used to be 3 courses. So I taught the middle piece like 6 times, and then the third piece like 2 or 3 times. And that was when it really became clear there was a huge gap. Listen, I love that you brought all this, for our listeners. I want to shift gears, though. People obviously can reach out to you. Where are you located? You're in New Mexico, correct?
New Mexico, yep. We're based out of Albuquerque.
Albuquerque, New Mexico. So if people are looking for referrals, you're an awesome source. I know we've sent you some referrals in the past. They can get in touch with you, ask you more questions about this. Man, I want to talk to you about expansion. I mean, we're partners up with the Her Group. You partnered up with Ben Kinney. So, you're doing 179 transactions. Why would you go partner up with somebody?
It's always a hot topic.
Yeah, I hear you. I get the same questions.
So the first piece for me is I believe that nobody succeeds alone. And we've got our own team. We've got this amazing growth that we've been experiencing. I communicate with our team, push our team, etc. And for me, I'm watching what the Ben Kinney team is doing. They're watching what we're doing. And we've known each other for 7 years. So as we've been growing and doing what we're doing on both sides, we've had different variations of conversation about, if we were ever to go into business, what would that look like? And it was really interesting because 2 things were happening. One, I wanted to move faster. Really, with Keller Williams, last year was my 6th year at Keller Williams. And when Ben was at Keller Williams for 6 years, their sales was at $100 million. Ours was at $38 million. So I'm looking at our sales, I'm looking at their sales, and I'm saying, okay, they're probably doing something different than we are if they're able to be hitting those kinds of numbers in that span of time. So that was one thing that was really interesting to me, was to be able to get that kind of information and business acumen with a company and a team that's doing that. And then, so it was bigger and faster really was the 2 big motivators for me, and opportunity for our people. As these expansion teams are growing and they're growing across the country, we have circumstances where our agents may not be staying here, and where else can they have an opportunity to really do something at a high level within the company. So that was another piece that was really interesting to me too. So back to my story, we had met up with them, and the mission of the Ben Kinney team is the dream of home ownership everywhere. And that's something that I personally believe in. The vision is to dominate markets, make millions, and give millions, which is also right in alignment with what we've been striving for. So in doing all of that and meeting with them and looking at it, I was blown away by how much in alignment we were before we were even in business together. To me, it made sense. It's almost kind of like another friend of mine, we were talking. He said, if I had an opportunity to have 10% ownership in all of the Victoria's Secrets across the country, or 100% ownership of my boutique out here in Albuquerque, I'm going for Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's looking at the bigger picture and being around amazing leadership and people that are doing things at an extremely high level.
Yeah. Isn't it kind of the same as like the agent that instead of joining a team, they stay independent because they want to make sure they keep 100% of their commissions, but yet they don't even, they close like 5 or 6 deals where they could join a team and do 40 or 50 deals?
Absolutely.
It's kind of similar to that. What up, Masters? Don't worry, we're going to get you right back to the show. And if you're looking for more ideas, techniques, tools, and strategies, get yourself a copy of the Sales Playbook. Simply pause the show, go to thesalesplaybook.net, or go to Amazon, type in the Sales Playbook. You rock. Enjoy the rest of the show. I was in the process of expansion. I mean, I was going to expand my team, HTA Homes. We had set our mind. We went and we took ESO with Kristen Cole. And from sitting through that class for 2 days, I had realized that, wow, there's no possible way I could expand what I had going on. So in my mind now, and this was a huge realization for me. Like I just realized what a mess I had. I mean, it was fine for doing what we were doing. You know, we were stuck at that 90 to 100 unit ceiling. And I figured, okay, if I expand, but I realized my systems just weren't in place. What I had didn't work for that. So I went back to the drawing board, Valerie, and I says, here's my choices. I can A, build this thing where I can expand it, or B, look at some other partners like you did and say, okay, these guys already have this built, and talk about partnering with them. And I chose to have some conversations with them. And then in the end, I truly believe that the path to my goals, right, is faster through them. And that was why I partnered up, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So tell us, what's been your biggest challenge with expansion?
I would say probably one of the biggest challenges with expansion, which is always, and I wouldn't even say it's an expansion challenge. I think it's a Valerie challenge. Seeing my numbers and seeing the goal in sight and taking all the baby steps to hit the goal. One of the things that happened is Ben and I had a conversation about the team, and he finally had to pull out the trump card, and he said, look, here's the deal, Val. I've been doing this for 12 years. If you say, okay, when I really started doing real estate, let's say it's when I started with Keller Williams, or we could say it's 2009. So it's really about 7 years, 8 years, give or take. So he pulled out the trump card and he said, I've been doing this for 12 years. I'm giving you a gift. The challenge is that you have not experienced the friction or the challenges that we've experienced to truly understand why we're doing it this way and what the gift is. And so I think that's also part of it is, you know, following the process and also us as human beings wanting to deviate and get a little creative.
Yeah.
And that's the part where it's really not about creativity. It's about following the process and then making sure that you stick to it, no matter how boring or whatever it can be.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, you know, based on what you're saying. Yeah, so how do you keep yourself focused? Because one of my biggest challenges is impatience, right? I want everything right away. And when things aren't going my way, I can tend to, if I let myself, if I'm not aware, to default back to my normal way of doing things, right? How do you keep going forward on track with maybe doing it the Ben Kinney way?
Well, and we're not being micromanaged by any means. It's just that you can see, Adelina, to me, is a great example. Adelina, she's probably experienced the two sides of it with regards to she started from ground zero. As she started from ground zero, she really was implementing and setting the expectations and doing all of those things. So if I ever find myself wanting to get creative, all I have to do is look at what Adelina's done. And that creativity piece, it's like, here's the proven model. So, you know, it's just a matter of moving on and doing it. So when I start finding myself swaying, I go back to the people that are truly modeling it and working towards it. Again,
coming back to what we talked about earlier, it's really going to be about your support, the people that you're around, right? The people that you're communicating with on a regular basis, right? That are helping you stay focused.
Yep. And who you're surrounding yourself with too.
Yeah, that's huge. So what is your actual goal? Like what, you know, going into it, you know, I had a conversation with Adam before I partnered up with those guys, and I said, hey, this is my goal, Adam. This is where I want to be in 3 years. Is this achievable? And based on the conversation we had and based on the plan he put together, I believe it is achievable, right? So what's your goal with that? Or did you have a goal going into it?
Yeah, our goal actually by the end of 2018 is to have sold $95 million worth of real estate, which for our market translates into 465 transactions. And so it's looking at how do we integrate and implement, because so back to the challenge question, this is one of the challenges. I wouldn't say it's the greatest challenge. It is a challenge though, and they've felt it on both sides as much as we have. We are an established team. So as we're integrating and implementing the pieces that are going to push us forward, it's also how do we work with that with our team so that they are also seeing the results and the benefits of doing it too.
Now, has there been any fallout when you partnered, or have everybody stayed with you?
Everybody stayed with us. It's been really cool to see how our team has been embracing and making the changes and growing. We have a record-breaking year right now. We sold 107 units as of last week, And so we're definitely seeing the fruits of our labor. And I was more concerned from the transition of how our people were going to get impacted by it. You know, we're a very staff-heavy company. Our team has a lot of staff, and I wanted to make sure we weren't going to have any issues that I experienced when the market was shifting. That was really important in our partnership, and that wasn't an issue.
Interesting. Yeah, I know me as well, and that was one of the biggest challenges for me was to give up some of my staff. So I actually kept an assistant all the way up to recently, where I now been with these guys. I started with them in January, and just recently, it was more of my own thing, right? Feel comfortable enough I don't really need a personal assistant right this minute. Mm-hmm. At least in my real estate business, I have a personal assistant that helps me with other things. Let me ask you this. What do you absolutely love about expansion, about your partnership?
Again, I have to say this lightly because we really are one of the newer teams that have been participating. The Mineshare, we have an amazing group of expansion partners. We communicate pretty much daily, every other day on some level, and share information, share a lot of things that are going on. Everybody's at different levels in their business too. And so some of the challenges that some of the teams are experiencing, other teams have already experienced, and back and forth. So the partners that we have it's truly amazing. The business people, to get into business with Ben is definitely not an easy task. And so getting into the business partnership with him too, that you're really getting to know some amazing people, and that has not changed at all. We have an amazing group of people. The hub is amazing. Jolene, who runs their team out and in the hub, the volume and the amount of business that they've done and the experience that they have is amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff, my friend. Any questions that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
If anything, maybe what advice would I give somebody that is just starting out in real estate? Maybe that would be a good question.
Yeah, I love it. Great question.
I'm a huge Diana Kokoska fan. I just absolutely embrace, adore, admire her energy and her mindset. And I think that one of the things nobody really knew or thinks about when it comes to real estate is how impacted the business is by your mindset. Starting with that one basic foundation of having the proper mindset and controlling the things that you can control. Ben talks about that with us a lot too, is what are the things that you can control? And the first piece is your mindset. So getting into the right mindset, whether you're doing it part-time and want to go into it full-time, whether you're just starting out. When I went into it full-time was in 2009. Everybody's saying the sky is falling. My husband's talking to people and they're saying, what does your wife do? And he says, she sells real estate. And I go, oh.
Yeah.
And there's a silence, like, is she okay? Or are you guys, how is that going? And he'd be like, no, you don't understand. She's doing great. And so when people were asking me, how's the market? I'd say, it's amazing. And they look at me like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, buyers are getting amazing deals right now. People are getting into homes that they never thought they could get into before. So my conversation and my mindset was always about how can this be such a great thing that's going on? Honestly, a lot of realtors were getting out of the industry at that time, which also was amazing.
Yeah. Well, it seems like we may be going through those times again pretty soon. So might be a great opportunity for a lot of people. Kind of the CNN version of what makes you as successful as you are. I'd love to know.
I would say it's the people around me. I am very, very clear on who I want to go into business with and what my expectations are with them. And it's really important to me to help my people achieve what they want to achieve. And as I'm helping them, they're also helping me. May I share a quick, funny little story with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my agents was in the Marines. He's retired now. And he was in part of different elite branches of the Marines. And I'm not going to even attempt to name them because I'm sure I'll butcher them. And he was working with a client and they were talking about his background. And he was explaining that he had retired from the Marines. And so I met up with the client this weekend and the client said, well, weren't you in the military? And I said, no, I wasn't. And I said, we saw that he said you were in the military. And I started laughing. And I said, I bet you I know what he said. I bet you he told you that working with me is like being in the military.
I love it. That's great.
Which is, I asked
That's
him,
probably what my people say.
Right. So honestly, I think what makes us really, really successful is that we have an amazing team, an amazing group of people. like I said, no one succeeds alone.
Yeah, and I also would add, I think you're very clear on your why and your vision and what you're doing. So that I'm sure that helps a lot too. Beyond Gary's books, I mean, we all know The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, one thing, all those great books. What would be your book recommendation for our listeners if they, we'll say for taking their business or their mindset? We'll go to mindset, taking their mindset to the next level.
Mindset to the next level. Just a book. The Traveler's Gift is a good one. That
is a good book.
That's one of the books that I really like. There's one that's a little tiny book. It's a Norman Vincent Peale book. It's called The Power of Positive Thinking. When I was about 12 or 13 years old, my dad gave it to me, and it talks about affirmations and things of that nature. And that's just a really great little reference book as well on mindset.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I would say those are probably my top two.
All right, awesome. Andy Andrews, right? Is that The Traveler's Gift?
Yes.
Yeah, that you guys, you have to listen to that on audio, right? Audible is amazing listening to him because he's such a great orator. I mean, the guy's a machine. And then also Norman Vincent Peale. So guys, listen, you can go to davidsfreebook.com, davidsfreebook.com, get yourself a copy of either of those books on Audible for free. So check that out, davidsfreebook.com, Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or Andy Andrews, the 7 Decisions, correct?
No, The Traveler's Gift.
Oh, The Traveler's. Oh, his other book was The 7 Decisions, I think, right? Is that? Or is I'm probably butchering that. It's all good. Anyway, so listen, hey, I appreciate your time. And listen, on our listeners' path to mastery, there's always a final question I ask is what is the one thing you want our listeners, Valerie, to take from this interview today on their path to sales mastery? Don't
give up. I think, regardless of what's going to happen in your real estate career, I always say real estate is not for the faint-hearted. There's going to be moments where you're questioning what is it all for. And then you're going to have really clear moments that remind you exactly why you're doing it. And part of my vision with it is to bring a new dimension to our market, to shake things up a little bit. And in doing that, it'll work eventually. If it doesn't feel like it, just don't give up.
Don't give up, my friends. Valerie, thank you for your time. You're absolutely brilliant. This is great stuff. I can't wait to get out there and listen to it myself.
Thanks, David.
Hey, Masters, you guys know how important health and nutrition is to me. I just want to talk to you a little bit about products I use called AdvoCare. I've been using these products for about 1.5 years now, mostly just for energy. They've got a really awesome drink. It's called Spark. If you want to check out anything, I would tell you, go check out the energy drink Spark. That's what I did for, like I said, almost 1.5 years without even trying any of their other products. And then this past January, a bunch of us, January 4th, decided we were going to do the 24-day challenge, which is a 10-day cleanse and then 14 days of just really healthy eating, vitamins, meal replacement, just awesome 24 days just to kind of get yourself on track and get into some right habits. So Richie Ryan did it with us. Guys, he lost, today's February 5th. I think he's at 24 pounds lost since January 4th. Melissa at our office lost 6 pounds. Min at our office lost 5 pounds. Guys, I mean, listen, it's amazing. Regardless, if your goal is losing weight, my goal wasn't losing weight. I did the challenge just so I could experience it. And, I lost a few pounds, but now I put some weight back on because I started using some of the supplements and the protein powder and all the other stuff. So now I've gained about 3 pounds of muscle and just feel awesome. My energy's through the roof. So whether you're looking for energy or you're looking for just wellness, I mean, they've got some amazing green products that I love taking before I go to bed. Or if you're looking for performance, athletic products, we've got the athletic performance products. And then just active, if you're an active adult, maybe getting a little older in the age and you want to just keep everything working the right way and functioning. Listen, Gary Keller said it best. If you don't take care of your body, where are you going to live? And I just love that. So, hey, I just ask you to check out AdvoCare's products. I'm a distributor, so I'd love to help you, talk to you about your nutrition and health goals. You go to livelongersmarter.com, livelongersmarter.com. If you loved what you heard on this episode and you're looking for more techniques, tools, strategies, and ideas, simply go to thesalesplaybook.com. thesalesplaybook.net and get yourself a copy of the Sales Playbook. You can also go directly to Amazon, type in the Sales Playbook, and buy your copy today.
You are listening to One More Sale with your host, David I. Hill, author of the Sales Playbook. Get your copy at www.thesalesplaybook.net.